This is something that always happens to me. I have an idea for a video and then 2 days later, before I record it, a YouTuber posts a video with the same topic. And it's frustrating because it seems like I'm copying that YouTuber, but that's not true. This has happened many times, I'm not kidding. So even though Peter McKinnon just made a video about it, I'm still gonna do a video about basics of photography. A quick guide to ISO, aperture and shutter speed.
Will I cry? Will I leave behind broken and crumbled signs, hiding all my roads to you? And if I
So, beginning with ISO. It is how sensitive the sensor of the camera is. The higher the ISO, the brighter your image. However, as you start increasing the ISO, your image starts to get noisy, like this. So, the minimum ISO is usually 100 and it goes up to 1600, 4000. It depends on the camera. If you're using an entry-level camera like a T6i, T7i or any Rebel series from Canon, you're gonna be able to use an ISO up to 1600 without many problems. But if you're using a full frame camera, which is a professional camera, you can go up to 4000, 5000 with no problems. We'll talk more about cameras in another video. Now the second thing is aperture, which is located in your lens. As you can see here, can you see how there's a hole inside the lens? This hole right here, it's called the aperture, which is basically the amount of light that hits your sensor through the lens. So if it's wide open, your image will be bright. And you're also gonna get a shallower depth of field, which results in a blurry background. When you start closing the aperture, your image starts getting darker and everything is basically in focus. So you have like a deep depth to field. Here I have a shallow depth of field, that's why the background isn't in focus. But you also gotta keep in mind that the higher the number, the smaller your aperture will be. So like f22 is a closed aperture. If you use like f2.8, f1.8, f1.2, it's a pretty wide open aperture, so it lets a ton of light in and you get a lot of background blurry. As I'm using f4 and I'm using a wide angle lens, there's not that much of a blurry background. Usually lenses that can reach a wider aperture are more expensive. And the last one, shutter speed, is the amount of time in which your image gets exposed. So if you have a long exposure like 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, you're gonna get a lot of motion blur on your image because it captures the movement from one side to the other of the image. But if you wanna freeze an action, if you wanna shoot sports or something like that, you gotta use a really fast shutter speed. So like 1/500th of a second, 1,000th of a second, something like that. You also gotta keep in mind that if you're using your camera, if you're hand holding your camera, you're not able to use that long exposure because you're gonna get camera shake. So avoid hand holding your camera and using long exposure. I think the longest you can get is like 1/60th of a second, because otherwise if you go with a lower number like 1/30th of a second or a second, you're gonna get a blur on your image because there's a big movement on the camera during this time. So if you're using a really fast shutter speed like 1/500th of a second, there's no problem with that because you're holding the camera and the time the image gets exposed, it is so fast that the camera doesn't even move a lot. But if you're using a long exposure hand holding the camera, you're gonna get problems with camera shake. So that's it. I hope you liked this video. If you did, like and subscribe so you can watch more videos, my next videos. Also, follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's @RenatoDep_. It is showing up right here, so you can follow me. The link is in the description below. That's it for today, guys. See you in the next one.